Okay, well, it is time, and as usual, I like to start on time so that we don't punish the folks who are already here. Excuse me, Annetta. We're going to begin.
Wonderful.
I think everybody here knows where the restrooms are, out in the hall there. So I don't need to go into that. And tonight, our
Funny. Cute. Hey, it happens.
She's getting off. Okay, good. Okay, so tonight we have Dr. Becky Pearson from, well, actually, she's the head of the Public Health Sciences Department at NMSU. And she's going to introduce herself anyway, so the fact that I screwed it up doesn't matter.
Hey, you just warmed it up so that I can screw it up.
Oh, okay. So anyway, we're very happy to have her here. You know, we know about the one big, beautiful bill, and there are a lot of things about it that we don't like, but I felt that it was important to know about the public health aspect of it. How is this affecting us now and in the future? Because, you know, even if we change administrations, it's going to take a while to get back to where we had been. We've interrupted some research efforts, and you don't just start those up again, kind of thing. So anyway, Becky's going to talk to us, and she has a great presentation for you.
Okay. Well, thank you. As I told Jan, I don't get out much, so I've never worn one of these, and for a bit it was falling off, so we'll see if I can keep it on. I really thank you for welcoming me here. I'm really honored, and before I forget to say this, I just this minute, a few minutes ago, learned that in Monterey Park, California, the voters passed a permanent ban on data centers. So, and that the news was, that a lot of city councils are passing moratoriums, and this is the first place in the nation where, where the voters actually said, we're not gonna do this. Mike, is it still, I think it's still okay, all right. So, and what that's reflective of for me is two things. First of all, I learn all the time, and so I just love to learn, and I got that from my mom, I think. She loves to learn in different ways. But I will also let you know that I kind of collect heroes, and I will say that Jan is a hero because Jan said the phrase the other day, well, public health is all of us, right? Kind of on the phone to me, and I was like, oh, yes, it is. And that was the first simple statement that I think really captures how I feel and how I try to explain public health all the time. So I just really loved that, Jan. And so thank you again for that. Let's see. So in my lifetime of doing this, I have met with you folks twice before this, and both times were in Ellensburg, Washington, where I consider my hometown in a way, my most recent kind of hometown. And paralleling that, I consider NMSU to be my academic home, because 22 years ago here, I earned my master's in public health, and okay, I knew that would happen. There it went. And I'm back. And it was a long and winding story and road for me to come back here. But I love public health. I love a particular kind of brand, I suppose, of public health for myself. I love sharing it with other people. I have been, if you've heard the term explainer, I've been a public health explainer before explainers were cool. Vox does some really great explainers. They used to be free. Now you see a great article and references Vox, an explainer, and oh shoot, you have to subscribe. So I no longer get easy access to Vox explainers, but I've been explaining public health for a really long time. And so, and I've been learning public health for a really long time, and I keep learning it. So this was actually a neat opportunity for me to learn more, because I'd only read a little tiny bit about what this law has done and stands to do and kind of keeps doing in and on and to public health and people. And so very, very quickly, as I realized, oh, I'm going to do this, I started reading more, looking at more, and that was really neat for me. So I will say that when I'm asked to do this stuff, when I'm asked to visit with people, I'm not asked as an expert, because very few people in public health have a specific expertise or a general expertise that will allow them to come and talk almost on the fly about something that's important to them in public health. And so I am not asked, I don't think, as an expert, but I am asked largely because I represent collectives who care about community and public health outcomes, and because I answer the phone. So, seriously, that's what happens, right? That's how I end up being able to be welcomed into spaces like this to talk with people. So, and as I think about it, as I do my own work over the last, 22 years here in 2004, earning the Master of Public Health here, thinking I was going straight into the field, it not happening, not getting jobs I was applying for, and then hearing about a doctoral fellowship. And I thought, kind of 3 strikes. I don't want a doctorate. I don't think I'm cut out for university life. I don't want to teach. I wanted to go into the field. I don't want to go to Arkansas, which is where it was. And folks said, well, just apply, right? And so when you apply and you get something like that, sometimes you go. And so that's how I earned the doctorate at University of Arkansas. As I did that, I decided I did enjoy university life, and I did feel that my way in for public health might, instead of being straight in the field, might be about talking to people who want to build the next generation of the public health workforce. And so I gradually decided, oh yeah, I am aiming myself at university life. And that was great, because the people at Arkansas said, shh, stop talking about the fact that you don't think you want to go into university life. We're training you for that, and we gave you big money to come here to learn to do that, so do it. So all that to say, I ended up in my first faculty job in Ellensburg, Washington, and it was a bit of as close as I could get to where I felt I wanted to be geographically. And again, kind of, you apply for something, you get it, you go, right? So I applied for 9 faculty jobs. I got 3 interviews. I got 1 job. And that's all I needed, was 1 job to uproot myself and my spouse from Arkansas, where I had dragged him 4 years before, right? Let's uproot again and go for my first faculty job. So I ended up in the dead center of Washington State, Ellensburg, Washington, Central Washington University. And as I did the work of being a faculty member there, and then moved into different spaces in faculty life, I just kept doing the work that instinctively came to me. And that work sometimes involves kind of collecting heroes. So like I said, Jan's a hero for making that statement the other day in my ear. But one of my other heroes and just thinkers who I kind of respect, and I didn't realize it until the other night. So sometimes when I don't sleep well, I listen to podcasts. And sometimes I've read something recently that sleep does some work for you. And sometimes it's that you wake up thinking, oh, I've got this nailed, right? Well, similarly, if I have stopped worrying sometimes about when I don't sleep, it's because, well, in the middle of the night, I can kind of let my brain do some work. And sometimes that happens by happenstance when I catch a podcast. And so I caught a podcast the other night, middle of the night, with someone who's thinking I respect, and her name is Krista Tippett. And she has a podcast called On Being. And the episode I caught the other night was about MLK Jr.'s speech that they have kind of shorthanded as Beyond Vietnam, I think is what I recall the title. And she was interviewing two people who have been connected to people who were deeply involved with his work prior to his killing. And she introduced him and the thought, in a way, as she said, you know, if we live too much in kind of real time, you know, just real time, the things that are happening that are distressing us all the time, we actually kind of real time confuses happening with meaning. And that, shoot, there it goes again. So she said, and I'm paraphrasing, she said, the work of thinking and imagining and creating needs to be bigger than that which transfixes and demoralizes in the moment. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's how I do public health. So that's how I think. It's how I've thought for a really long time. And so the gist for me was that because, as MLK Jr. said, the arc of the moral universe is long and it bends toward justice. But also, right, people who say, well, you got to be active, you got to do something, right, that Representative Chantel Brown is one of them, and she mentioned that bend is not inevitable, but happens only if we pull it. And I thought, oh, how intriguing, right? So I think that many people in this room, many people on the Zoom, many people doing public health, thinking public health, loving public health, right? They're always kind of trying to pull that arc toward justice because they know that it's not going to happen on its own. And again, part of who I am, I guess, and Mike, actually, yeah, if you can move the slide to the next one. So I like to express positionality, right? So I've already done that a little bit for you. I do it in my own classes because it helps students understand things better if they know where you're coming from, right? It helps them think, even when you are talking very, very politically, that it's not beyond the pale for them. They understand that is public health. And more, we in public health are understanding ourselves to be in a political field. I have colleagues who do that work really well, do that writing and thinking around that really well. And we also know that students are recognizing that. We have research, we have literature on students saying, hey, public health is political, isn't it? And don't our classes have to deal with this a little bit more, right? So it's not research here, right? But we have nationwide research, surveys of students who are saying, we gotta have this a little bit more. And I learned early on, both at NMSU as a master's student and in my first faculty job at Central, that if I won't say careful, but if I talked about things as being, right, I started to understand definitions of political. And for me, there's big P politics and small p politics, right? And big P is party politics and calling each other names. And small p politics is talking about the way the world works and who gets what and how and why and who wins, who loses, right? So that is squarely public health. And if I brought those definitions, brought that messaging into my classes and talked to students about what we're going to do versus what we're not going to do, suddenly it was all okay. And I was the person who, when I'm walking down the hallway between faculty meetings and my other faculty are going, God, I just got yelled at by the students on my evals because I was too political, right? It didn't happen for me. It never happened for me. And I think it's just that instinct piece and moving toward being able to talk about what we need to talk about, right? So I've been explaining public health since I started deciding to go back to school even, right? So with my family, with my friends, with my neighbors, with faculty who taught me to own a perspective in my field, right? And that perspective changes. And one thing that changed for me was before I left Central in 2020, when we had COVID and we had George Floyd, right? Those two things made a deep and vast difference in how I did and thought about public health for public health education, right? For students and for the success of my field. And then more experiences, kind of as a faculty leader, you know, in some ways, kind of brought me to that. Let's see. So later, and then now back at NMSU, right? I'm here as a department head, which means I do a whole lot of meetings and deadlines and paper pushing and one class a semester, and trying to take my brain out to play with it once in a while to do the things that I still, feel are mine to own, mine to be my calling in public health. But so my life is kind of circumscribed now as a faculty member in a way that it used to not be, which has been interesting. But what I still think about and think more and more about is kind of the politics of everything, the politics of public health. I'm into food. I'm into sustainability and environment, in case any of you are. I'm into older people. I'm growing older myself. And I am into socially inclusive aging and that kind of thing, again, for myself, as well as for those I love, for those I'm with, right? So there's a lot of things I'm into. And Mike, if you'll go ahead and the next slide, yeah. And so one thing I got to do last semester, again, because I picked up the phone when someone called, was I got to give a talk on the politics of public health and kind of my approach. And so this is a slide, and I'll make sure, I think the clickable link doesn't work as well as I'd hoped it will. But if you would like this handout, I can get it to you. And all the links in it go to resources that I used in that talk. But so again, we can do this stuff. We can talk about what we need to. And so Mike, why don't you move it to the next slide, and we'll see if Heather will play. Yay, I think she will. Okay, so this is 2 minutes that kind of or describes kind of, again, where I'm at and one of my kind of current heroes, Heather Cox Richardson. And so
somebody said to me, and I think probably in some frustration, because I always sound like Pollyanna, right? What would have to happen for me to concede that the United States is beyond hope? And the answer to that is that we would have to meet the end of the world. And the reason I say that is because I don't know about you, but I got to get up again tomorrow morning, and I got to put one foot in front of the other. And I don't know what's going to happen. But I do know that I either have the ability to try and make the world a better place or to give up on it. And I will never give up on it. So when I think about our future and what we can do with our future, what I see is a country that has always been deeply flawed. That's what democracy is. It reflects the human beings who run it. And we are all profoundly flawed, all of us. I see that as an expression of the human will for self-determination. And I believe in that human will to have the control of our destiny, of who we become, and the real drive to create a government that enables all of us to have that human right. That's what's set out in the Declaration of Independence, and that's what people have fought for throughout our almost 250-year history. So when you ask, when am I really going to give up and say we're done? Not in my lifetime. Because I know as a historian, we have done it in the past. And what has made the difference between doing it and not doing it is having people like me and like probably all of you committed to getting up the next day and doing the next right thing. So you're not going to hear that from me that we're done. And any time that you see me still in there pitching like I am, you know I still believe in the cause of American democracy.
Awesome. Okay, and you may have to click the pause on her to keep her from starting again, but maybe not. Maybe it'll be okay. And I brought that in because she has a story, right? And it's a story of work. It's a story of hope. And I think that just is so reflective of who I am and what I want to do in public health. And I think it's probably, again, something that resonates for lots of you. And here I just denied Jan's offer to take that away and use something else, but okay, is that okay? All right. And so the other thing I do, and feel free, Mike, to move it to the next one. The other thing I do is I read a lot. I read a lot of fiction even, and you will probably hear that faculty members always, oh, I don't have time for that, right? I don't have time for fun. Well, we don't really, oops. But something that resonated for me recently was in a book called The Mad Sisters of Essie, and it was pretty gigantic book, and it was fun though. It was female and sustainability oriented sci-fi in a way. And the quote for me was, everything is more powerful when you don't understand it. When something is storyless, its mysteriousness makes it easier to accept. But when something has a story, it shrinks down to the same level at which you view the rest of your life. And suddenly it is open to evaluation. And I just thought, oh my gosh, right? That just hit me so much, that thinking about the One Big Beautiful Bill and what it does, if we understand it, even little bits of it, right? Again, I didn't build any expertise over the last few days. I just built a little connection. So again, that helps me, because if we simply learn that we can talk about stuff and that we can bring a story and meaning to something, then someone's going to say, but wait, okay, now this hits me. Okay, now I understand why I should care, right? And that goes from personal health to science and medicine, all the way through to policy, law, and society, right? And that we can do that. We can learn. I tell my students, you know what? I'm not the only one who can do this. You can do it too, right? Because they say, oh, where did you learn that? Well, I learned it in my little tiny bit of social media time to read credible voices around social issues, right? That's when I learned it. I learned it because I went from there to a news source. I went from there to the study, right? And I'm not asking students to go that far, but they can do that too, right? They can learn too. Because public health is not common sense. A lot of people, oh, it's just common sense, right? It's not. It's definitely not, okay? But it is understandable. And the impacts on us and the things that we can all engage in are understandable too. So Mike, if you move it to the next slide. My favorite model, and this looks complex, is the social ecology model. And it's got quite a history. And like everything else in public health, we borrowed it from somewhere. So it is not ours. Very little of what we do in public health is actually ours in terms of our thinking. We borrow from so many fields. And this one looks complex because this is the one that I use in kind of a game with students in orientation and sometimes in kind of early classrooms, and where it pops up as I click and it puts all these factors in the right levels. It starts as those just empty circles, and then they fill up like that. And students can get, oh my gosh, yeah, this is my life. Yeah, lack of sidewalks on my street, that's my life, right? And so again, the social ecology model is pretty darn simple. And again, it's not ours, we borrowed it, right? But it says that there are all these levels that affect our health and that we can actually affect them. So, and that we do. And again, that's something that I've just kind of started to realize is we do affect them when we don't care and when we do care. We do affect them when we don't vote and when we do vote. We do affect them when we make certain purchasing decisions or don't, right? So these are ways that this model really resonates, and that again, people can actually see their way in. Like, oh yeah, I can go from what I know, believe, and do, my attitudes, my own biological history, my family history, that yellow circle, right, that is me, right? I can go out to the next one that is kind of my interpersonal, my peer-to-peer, what happens in my friends and family group, right? I can look out from that to what's happening in my organization. And I always tell students, right, school is your organization. Well, it's my organization too. It's just a different place for me than it is for you. And I can affect that level differently than you can, right? You can be a student who is engaged on campus and who says, oh, I want this, and right, and I'd like to see better food, and I'd like to see us recycle more. I'd like to see there be compost in the student union, right? You can do that, just as I can do the things that are in my realm of our institutional setting. And they get it, right? And we can go up from there, and we can affect those other outer layers, but really we can only do it by engaging politically, right? Engaging in the world as it is, and engaging on moving forward, engaging on not letting ourselves just be devastated by things that happen, but by understanding them, by staying in the moment, by knowing that, right? That if we, is it even working at all, Mike? Is it still? Okay, all right, if I keep it on. Right, that if we actually kind of stay right where things are happening, but know where our place is and what we can do to affect change. And I'm not an activist. I have tried at different times to go to meetings, right? I've tried to be someone who writes letters. I've tried to, right? And I don't. And I was feeling really guilty about that for a while, until I started realizing, and it was even hitting me like this last, year and several months, oh wait, because I do class like I do class, and because I help the next generation of students who've come to campus to learn about public health, and maybe they haven't even, but they've taken this personal health class, and they say, wow, she's talking a lot about things outside us. And I say, yeah, let's look at the course outcomes again, that say you will come out of this class understanding how your health is seated in public health. And this is my brand and my way of bringing it to you, right? So when I do that, I don't have to feel guilty anymore, because I'm touching something without being an activist, without going out and letter writing, without going out and marching, right? I've gone to marches, and but I don't do it often, because first of all, I don't do the heat. But second of all, because I just don't do it. I just don't do that well. So, but we have to find our place, right, and our ways in. And the social ecology model lets us do that. It says, hey, if your way to make change is simply in yourself, learning more about something, right? Going out and doing a little bit more reading, going out and paying attention to the news, not saying, oh, I don't listen to the news because it's too upsetting, right? If your way is talking to your uncle, as I have done in the past, about, thank you, what a great dinner. That's all I want. I just want that little tiny piece of meat, though. I don't want the massive piece of steak you're trying to put on my plate. Oh, don't you worry about that crap, right? But talking, if that's my way in, right, talking to family and just going like, hey, I'll eat anything, right? I'm not an avowed vegan. I'm not there to make family dinners uncomfortable. I'll eat anything. But if I say, hey, like that's enough for me, right? Just I'm going to say that. So if that's my level, right? Or again, my organizational level, if I can go up and if I find those ways in, right? And everybody can find those ways in. And next slide, Mike. And the next slide is just a simpler, more kind of public-friendly way of looking at this. And it says, look, there are all these levels. And then what this one does too is I love, it puts that side information, right? That, hey, it's these things out here that affect us the most, that have the greatest impact on our health, whether it's for good or ill, right? It's these things down here, the individual piece, the knowing I have to learn more, the knowing I have to build my confidence, the knowing I have a tumor, the knowing I don't have health, right? That stuff, okay? That has less of an effect on us all than healthy or unhealthy public policy. And so this model, this image of the model calls that out for me, and I think that's really powerful and important. And go ahead, Mike, you can move it to the next page. And again, these slides have links out and to resources, right, if you would like to look at them. And then straight from the same folks who brought that yellow focused model, right, with up and down arrows, from someone else, well, they also did this. And I just found this several months ago, and I brought it into my classroom because I thought, oh my goodness, right? If the circles are just too much, right, for students sometimes, which they really aren't. I haven't run into that. They get it, they love it. But this is also something to love. And it just expresses the same thing. And it is from a little, I think it's like a 12, 15-minute video that these folks who did this research and used this model to express how public health impacts people, right? They did a little explainer video that's really cute, right? And this is a still from it that they put into a research article that they published. And it just kind of shows you that, right? And it talks about how, okay, for some of us, we're like this, right? And some of us are like, hey, things are good, and how's it going for you? And right, and our health is better because we have more ways in, because we are more privileged, whatever the idea is, and it's because our social ecology is different and more easy, right? So again, I love bringing this stuff because it helps us know where we can go, right? Where we can even go to be more interested, right? with students, it's all about, hey, can you capture that interest the tiniest little bit? And some folks who are like rock star teachers will say, you know, if you don't capture that at the very beginning, you're gone. It's gone, right? That's not true. I've had students, you know, come back in after sessions where they're just like, and be like, oh, oh, really? This is part of public health, really? Right? So we can always do this stuff, right? And I think that, again, this image that, again, I brought into as a student activity several months ago in my spring class, because I just came upon it and thought it was fabulous, and they loved it too, right? This helps show that inequity piece, right? The levels and the factors of things hurting us, and how they work, right, in people's and communities' lives, and that's the politics of health and public health, right? And so, and next slide. So 3 more of my other favorite ideas in public health, and again, they're the practical pieces, right? And they are the ones that we clearly are borrowing from other people. But so one is critical literacy, and if that sounds complex, it's not. So, or at least how I've internalized it. Now, someone who's a critical literacy theorist would be like, she didn't say that right at all. But what I think I understand about critical literacy is that it's what we all need to know and be able to do the things we want to do, whether that's for ourselves or our families or our communities. So it's being able to know, right? We have to have the knowledge, the skills, the understandings, and the know-how to do, and the confidence to do the things we need to be able to change what we want to change, whether that's to eat better or to stop smoking, or to make sure we don't fall as seniors, or to not have unsafe sex, right? Or if it's about being in the community and working on our profession to do things better, to make sure that we are engaging in equitable public health strategies, right? So critical literacy can hit every individual, it can hit every professional, right? And again, it's simple. It's so simple, right? Structural competence, same level of simplicity, right? It just means that you will be competent. You will understand the things that have an effect on you. And so to me, structural competence lives squarely in critical literacy, right? Because if I know about the things, like the OBBB, that affect me, then I can know how to take care of my own health in that way. Or maybe I can't, right? Again, maybe we're so devastated. Maybe the impacts are so big. Maybe we can't do anything. But we can keep learning. And the more I know about stuff, well, then maybe I can help affect the future, right? Maybe I can have a conversation with a friend. I have a friend who is deeply, deeply, deeply conservative, and his spouse is deeply blue and liberal and progressive. And we have conversations, and sometimes he's had his feelings hurt, and he's had his feelings hurt by her and by their son. He has not had his feelings hurt ever by me. He said, why do you think that? What do you mean? Talk to me more, right? And so if we can do that within our own close, intimate circles, right, that is important. And we can do that when we know about the structures that do impact us, when we know about credible sources that are actually talking to us about what's going on, right? And when we know that knowing all of that is knowing what to do and how to do what we need to do what we want to do, right? And this third one, lateral reading, I hadn't heard about that until like 2 weeks ago. I came upon it and I thought, oh my gosh, that's what I do. So lateral reading is shorthanding. It's rabbit holing, but in a really strong positive way. And I realized that I'd been doing that with and for my students. I'd be like, hey, so here, I read this morning, I heard this, right? And let's go out and look at the news article and let's make sure we understand it together. Oh, and let's click on just one of the sources just to make sure we do understand the credibility, right? That is lateral reading. Having too many tabs open on your computer is lateral reading, right? And there are folks talking about this skill of lateral reading as part of what we need to do in the college classroom, as part of what we need to do in public health undergraduate and graduate education. And it's like, oh, hey, I've been doing that. I just didn't know the word for it. So now you know the word, right? Or the words. So lateral reading. So if you're someone who does lateral reading for yourself, or whether you're going to go talk to somebody else about something, right? It's a skill. And again, it's kind of a public health relevant theory or idea that I love. And so All right, next slide, Mike. So, so what's the story of the OBBB? Well, again, I learned a lot in the last few days, okay? I learned a lot. So what it is it's a reconciliation bill. I was like, okay, I've heard that term. What does that even mean, right? So I went out and got a definition of that. And I was like, oh, okay, that's what that means, right? So it's a reconciliation bill. What it does, it's called Public Law number 119-21 as of July 4th, 2025. And what it does, in quotes, is it reduces taxes, it reduces or increases spending for various federal programs, it increases the statutory debt limit, and otherwise addresses agencies and programs throughout the federal government. That's what this thing does. Okay. How it works, okay? Put really simply, because that's the only way I can understand it, because I don't know enough, because I've just barely scratched the surface of what I should know to talk with you about this, right? But how it works is, it works through provisions, okay? And some provisions, for example, affect programs such as those under SNAP. It's just like the OBBB says, so hey, agency, this is how you're going to do this. And when you do that, right, then that has an effect on people via having effects on programs and agencies and entities. And so how it affects us, and if we want to, so let's see, Mike, if this will work. We could click on all of these, but let's just go and click on the short answer from LWV, right, the League of Women Voters, under how it affects us. The one on the right, yeah, let's click there and see if it'll actually go. And then, yeah, you'll have to, without being able to see it there you go, yeah. So this is the League of Women Voters take on what is the One Big Beautiful Bill and its impact. And I found it pretty straightforward and enough big print, not too much fine print, and enough white space that I was like, okay, this helps me understand. So let's see how far we can just look a bit, and we won't read together or anything like that. But so they talk about what happened, right? What actually happened, right? This law was signed, okay? And then they talk about the various agencies and the things that it does, okay? And again, hey, okay, right? And so yeah, we can all do this. And when we have the time and the inclination, and we're not too devastated by the latest thing we read, or we're not, on the flip side, too elated and not paying any more attention because we read that Monterey Park in California put a ban in place on data centers, and we're like, oh my gosh, I can't think of anything else but then that for the next week, right? When we're not in that mode, in either one of those modes, then we can spend time with news, right? And when we decide, when we are not those people, another conversation I've had with that friend who is so conservative with the wife, who is so progressive, right? Another conversation I've had with him is about trust, because he says, oh, I don't listen to the news anymore. I don't do news anymore, right? He's one of those folks. I don't do that because I can't trust anything. You really can't trust anything, Becky. And I'm like, well, actually you can. And I have to, because I work and teach in a field that demands we trust in agencies, that puts students in readiness for careers in agencies and entities where we trust them. What are we doing? So no, Pete, I trust things. I choose wisely, I choose narrowly and broadly, right? The number of times I've told my students and told this friend, right? I watch Fox News. I listen to Glenn Beck, right? I do that because I learn. I've been learning from the Wall Street Journal Weekend for 20 plus years now. Very conservative paper, not rabidly so, but pretty conservative paper, right? With a pretty conservative editorial board. And yet, I've learned a lot about public health and economics, right? And the ways things do affect us, and the ways we want to know more about things, and other experts out there talking about something in a way that someone else might be able to understand it when they wouldn't maybe listen to me or someone that they thought was too liberal or progressive, right? So another thing I spend time with lately is a Substack, if you know Substacks, right? A newsletter basically, called The Healthiest Goldfish. And it's written by someone, his name is Sandro Galea, I think. pretty well known in public health academia, and yet I didn't know of him until I saw this Substack and saw things that I was reading were linking out to him. And he has in that Substack, he has something called the Purple Project, and that's about trying to bridge gaps, trying to be able to talk to each other, right? And some of that I eschew a little bit, because, you know, some of it is, oh, like, go softly. Well, no, I don't need to go softly. I do need to own a space, right? And I own public health academia. I own it. I own the whole darn thing. No, but I own it for myself. I own my stance. I own my position, right? I own my way of dealing with it and helping people, right? And so that's what I do in public health. And again, so you can read all about this stuff. You can, if we go on to the next slide, Mike. Yeah, so if we look at specific impacts, okay. And again, so the stuff on the left is a little bit of almost an explainer about, you know, kind of just what it does, right? And that was taken from the budget reconciliation, from a budget reconciliation explainer put together by the House Committee on the Budget in January of last year. And so we should be able to, if we trust government at all, then if we haven't decided, well, I can't trust any aspect of this government right now, well, we could trust this explainer about what was going to happen with this bill, right? And about how it worked, and about the reconciliation process, right? And the reconciliation process, again, just learning this little teeny bit the last several days is something that makes it easier to get something passed, you know, faster and with less pushback, right? So that's why all this stuff was put under this reconciliation process, right? So then if we look though, right, at 4 kind of specific effects, and, you know, just to be cute and snarky, because sometimes I have to be, right? So on research, the asterisk says that's pronounced on people, right? Because if we affect research, if we, and that is probably a lot of the ways in that a lot of people have noted over the last several months to a year, is, oh my gosh, the research funding is going away. We're noting it in our own department, right? So last spring, right, before things even really heated up in this way, I lost most of a $3 million contract, you know, that we were in the midst of. It had been a multi-year. It was in place before I took the job. I was working, you know, heavily with partners on it, and we got a, you know, I don't know what they call it, you know, kind of a cease and desist notice, and it was gone, right? So I am well aware, and I've had colleagues who have specific realms of research where they talk the language of equity, they talk the language of things should be better, they talk the language of, I work with this specific population, and I want that population's health and health chances to be better. Gone, right? So I know I live in a zone where research funding goes away, right? But so that was kind of the early, I don't know if tip of the iceberg, but right, but it was early and often kind of that academics were getting that, and then it was kind of hitting the news. Oh wow, this specific cancer research money is just gone and this is going away, and oh my gosh, we're having it, right? So on research, right, the effects are felt on people, right? Not just people who do their work in research, but on people's lives, on people whose outcomes are affected by the possibility of research making change, right? So research is pronounced on people. And then, right, so in those other spaces, and you're gonna watch me take my glasses off and make sure I can see. Oh, right, again with the snark. My spouse says I shouldn't do this, but sometimes you gotta, right? So I don't know if you've noted in your realm, you know, Mehmet Oz, right, and his position right now. So he actually basically said, and we could go out and click on it. You know, we don't have to, but we could. So he said kind of, hey, these Medicaid work requirements, you know, it's actually like pretty much there's many, many people, most of you on Medicaid, who are sitting home watching TV. and you need to work, okay? And again, the snark just builds in me internally because, right, in reality, 80% of Medicaid enrollees meet the 80 hours a month work requirement. So only 1 in 5 actually aren't meeting already a work requirement. And those who are not have darn good reasons and big barriers to keep them from working, right? So come on, right? This is a felt impact, okay, on people. It may not be your people, right? But it might be your people. Another one, let's see. So the bill, and this is from the CBO, so the Congressional Budget Office, right? It reduces resources and added, including jobs, for the poorest households while increasing resources, while increasing them via tax breaks for the highest earners. And again, according to the CBO, if we trust anything, if we trust government agencies at all, kind of even within or aside from contexts, that's a trustable voice. If they're saying this is what this bill does, we can listen and we can know that that's an impact, right? And then finally, the law explicitly approves the use of these DHS, so Department of Homeland Security, funds for family detention, right? So another way that this one big, beautiful bill expressly hits people. And again, they may not be your people, they may not be our people, but they are people, right? They are people in our communities. They are people who contribute, right? And so these are the actual concrete and the felt possibilities of impact from this bill, okay? And then we can click to the last one. So if you don't care about Medicaid, you might care about Medicare, okay? And there are gigantic impacts on Medicare as well. Again, I take it back to, and those are the things that should have come out of that slide, but didn't. Those little other links, they were from the slide before. But right, critical literacy, structural competence, and our social ecology, right? If you understand those things a little bit and you do some lateral reading, you're not only going to be interested, you're going to be able to speak about this for yourself, right? And for those you love, you're going to be able to decide how to address it, right? How to vote, what your way in is, what your realm is, what your scope of influence, right? Your sphere kind of is. So that's what I have. So the last slide. Yep. And so there's a link to a quick briefing on New Mexico specific impacts. And then I have both my professional email and my personal professional email, as well as my office phone if you want to get in touch. So,
Do we have any questions? I'll bring the mic to you.
yeah.
Your information, do you have like a YouTube that you talk, or do you have a...
I wish I did. At
Something?
certain points in my career, I've thought, I should do that, and I don't. So it's too hard.
Okay.
I can't figure it out,
Thanks.
and I don't have the time. I would love to, though. Yeah, I would love to.
But tonight's presentation is recorded, and it will show up on our YouTube page.
Awesome.
Eventually, Mike is going to do it quickly.
Cool.
All
Hey,
right.
wow. That's faster than I get things up, Mike, seriously. So,
So Dr. Pearson,
sure, Becky.
the first handout that we got looks, well, both of them look excellent, but the first one has no source on it.
Oh,
Will it be in the YouTube that we get, or of this? I mean, you said that these slides could be sent.
yes, I can send the slides separately
Yeah.
to Jan and to Mike, and I can make sure that one that I said, I know it didn't attach to my handout the way it should have. I can make sure that you get that separately. And yeah, that League of Women Voters thing is right in there as well. Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so, okay. So this came from the League of Women Voters, the first
I
one?
think, I didn't print anything.
It's speaking about Maine, and the second one is about New Mexico.
Okay.
Yeah, I see that, and I see the source, Center for American Progress. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
We'll double check and make sure you get things with sources. Yeah.
Yeah, the page that had the source just had a big masthead and, you know, it was very colorful, but I didn't think I needed to print that part out. But then I lost the source entirely. I'm sorry about that. Other questions?
So I heard that online, looking at Medicare that I'm concerned with, and Social Security. So like in 7 years, we're going to run out of Social Security money. So which actually helps to pay for incidental, you know, that's over the board, you know, it's like Medicare. You still have to pay out of pocket the money that you don't have. It's like you make some money, it's taxed on, and plus you have to pay for what is it called? The initial pay, you pay copay or something. Deductibles, and then it's going up, and then there's no cap for anything in terms of surgeries. $130,000 surgery. Who has money to pay for that? I mean, and then somehow they negotiate that money between Medicare and the hospital to $5,000. So how did they do that? How did they? Why is it the sticker is up there at 130 to just stick to see, oh, you're gonna pay for it, and then but if you do a little bit of soul searching, and no, this is not how they paid them through my Medicare. It was only $5,000. Why is it? Why there's no cap? How are we going about correcting all of these things? All of this stuff is a simple thing. It's like 10 items that needed to be done. But it looks like nobody is want to bother with any of this stuff. You know, it's time to change. The governance is broken. The two-party system is messed up. So we can't get anything out of them. They're just fighting among each other, and then one group comes, takeovers, and the other group doesn't have any power to do anything. It's not like we're gonna talk. So if it was more like what is it called? More not two-party system, the red and blue parliamentary. So everybody has a voice. It's not like, hey, the lobbyist is gonna go work for these guys. That needs to be changed. I don't know. Sometimes I say I should have put a sign in front of my house to say, you know, this is 10 items, needs to be done right away. Why is it not done? Thanks.
Yeah, well, we need, and we keep pushing for it, don't we? Universal health care, single-payer health care, and then you don't need to worry about Medicare and, you know, all of its foibles.
Yeah, I don't know how many of you were around when we had a roundtable that compared the medical care systems in England, in Canada, I think in Germany, and in the United States. And that was Mike Hughes, the late Mike Hughes, did this comparative. One of the other things that Shah mentioned was, how do we have a voice? I watch every week in London, they have question time at 1 o'clock in London, and in Ottawa, and in Christchurch, and in New Zealand, and in Australia, where the whole Commons gets together on Wednesday afternoon and has questions for the Prime Minister. That is one thing that I think our country could take a long look at that makes our system much better than any of these other democracies. And the other thing I would like to say is, I don't know how long ago it was that Dennis Kucinich said, when we put profit into healthcare, we only answer to the shareholders.
Absolutely. Wow. Wow.
And I also want
to yeah. Sorry.
Okay, but I would also like to talk about mental health, because we don't have any.
Hello? Just getting back to public health, You know, when people, I've heard a number of presentations done on OBBB, and the one big beautiful bill, you know, I think it's always important. So well, first, let me begin by thanking you for your presentation.
Sure, thank you.
And I think you're just like absolutely dynamite in how you talk with your students. It seems like if I was in your class, I think I would really enjoy your classes. But I do think that it's important when people talk about this bill, that it has the word beautiful in there. So right off the bat, it's a misleading bill.
Yeah.
And many of the provisions don't kick in until after the midterms. So it's misleading there too. So if Democrats win, you know, they will get blamed for a lot of the things that are going to come out of this bill. So one of the things that I think is really important, and I think it's important for all of us, is that, you know, I got a call one day and it was a salesperson say, well, you know, because of the big, beautiful bill, blah, 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 you can afford this. And I had to correct that person, even though I didn't want the product. I said, look, first, it's not a big, beautiful bill. It hurts a lot of people. It hurts poor people. It hurts people who, it hurts women. It hurts people who don't have health care or have, you know, so I think that when we talk about it, we should always preface it by saying, even though the title says big, beautiful bill, it's really a very toxic bill for the masses. And it's not just the few. And the other thing too that I think, lately I've been thinking about public health because a friend said, you know, even gun control is a public health issue. And I've never thought of it that way. But the more that we think about public health and what affects everyone, not just a few people, the thinking starts to change. And so I think that, you know, and I've mentioned this to Jan before, I wish this room was always filled with people at this round table, because the speakers that I've heard, including you, are dynamite. You know, it's like a lot of deep wisdom that our community needs. But anyway, I just wanted to lift up the point that the title is misleading. The effect is actually quite toxic and harmful to the masses of people. And the only beneficiaries of this bill are actually the top 5% of the country, the ones who are making a lot of money. So that always has to be lifted up. So I'm just like raising that to make sure that everyone knows that's the beneficiary of this bill.
Thank you.
Thank you, Frank, that's very true. I mean, yeah, it's reduce taxes. For whom? Not for me, didn't work. They can't hear you on Zoom, just to hang on.
I just so angry about this beautiful bill. It's an slogan that it's been sold for many years in different fronts. It's just a propaganda and to make you be patriotism, you know, is false patriotism to what? To flag, to all of that stuff, and then underneath they can do whatever they want to do. Just, ugh. But I need to start from somewhere, somehow to get involved, and maybe they listen to. Nobody's listening to me. It's just like that.
Well, Sapi research bothers me because there were a lot of good research efforts being made that to develop medicines that would help us, and they all got interrupted, or most of them. And to speak to the Social Security running out of money, that the government stole the money from the Social Security funds to pay the interest on our deficits, which have grown. They always grow under Republican administrations, and they shrink under Democrat administrations. So what does that tell you?
And I think Mike's been waving. Mike's been waving. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, oh. Oh, Mike has a question, or somebody online does.
Awesome. Okay.
All right, so first we have Jacques D, who has asked, how does one stay hopeful, is my question.
Okay. I would say, Jagdish, if you listened to that little 2-minute, 11-second talk from Heather Cox Richardson, a political historian, right? You can't but stay hopeful. She said it. You get up every day, right? And you know as well as I do that you get up every day and you do the next right thing, I think she ended with, right? And the next right thing is small, maybe, and it's micro, and it's maybe only in your own house, or maybe it's in your classroom or your workplace, you know, or in your hobby group or wherever, but you just do the next right thing, right? And then you stay hopeful so that the next day you can get up and do the next right thing.
Great. He said thank you. And David Rice wanted to ask, does the BBB include much on work requirements for the receipt of benefits?
Well, certainly for Medicaid. I believe also for SNAP, although I hadn't looked at it in that depth. I had a conversation with someone a few weeks ago who was in favor of the work requirement that I believe was about SNAP. And she said, you know, if I have a 14-year-old at home, like that 14-year-old, I should have to work like that. And that was the cap on the age. She said that should be actually lower. Like if I have a 10-year-old, I don't need to stay home with them. If I'm getting benefits, I should be working. And so she was a fan, and seriously, it was not someone who wins under the OBBB who I was talking with. But so I was a little bit floored by that comment, but it was, you know, and again, it was a few weeks ago before I even heard about you all wanting to talk. But yeah, there are work requirements, I think, embedded in provisions for several different sets of assistance, right? So.
If you can, if you are capable of working and holding a job, like my son could take a job, but he couldn't keep it because somebody was sure to get in his face and make him angry, and he would lose it.
Wow.
And so he could not work. So, I mean, you know, he looked like he could,
Sure.
but he couldn't.
Yeah.
Any other, we're really out of time, so
Yeah.
I think I'm going to call a
Was there
halt to
anyone
the
else on
questions.
Zoom?
And in terms
okay.
of keeping hope, you know, Heather Cox Richardson pointed out that historically things work out, you know, and so that's my hope, that we're going to win again if we just keep doing what we're doing.
Thank
Dr.
you.
Pearson, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll try to get that lavalier off of you.
Yeah, I think it's the pocket that's the issue, right? Little tiny pocket here. Oops, shoot.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay,
Whew.
good.
Okay. All right. Well, that was cool. What a
Yeah,
cool
well,
experience.
yeah, but it didn't stay on. That was the
But
problem.
I think, you know.